Hey everyone, this is Dr. Kanita on another episode of Araya Holistic Healthcast. I'm here today. I brought back, of course, Dr. Mary Balliett, and I have another guest, Dr. Erica Callahan here. So, in the last episode, if you all remember, I talked to Dr. B about the basics of macronutrients that we'll go over again, that are the building blocks of your overall nutrition. If you want to re-listen to that, you can go click on the link later to go over just the basics of nutrition. But today we're going to actually focus on the pregnancy health, what nutrients you need during pregnancy, what's important for mama and the baby. And that's why I brought on Dr. Erica Callahan, which thanks Dr. B for recommending her to come on this podcast. Dr. Callahan has over a decade of experience teaching chiropractic students, including myself, about natural health care, including assessment, diagnosis, and management for the chiropractic and nutrition patient. She is now an associate professor at the Campbell University, starting in September 2021 as the professor of clinical nutrition and biochemistry. So thank you so much, Dr. Callahan and Dr. B, for coming back. Or Dr. B, welcome back. And Dr. Callahan, welcome to the show. And I'm really excited to talk about just the principles of nutrition for pregnancy health. Just like a quick intro, Dr. Callahan, what kind of got you into this?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, when I first knew that I wanted to go into medicine, I had kind of hopes and goals to be a pediatrician. So I was always really interested in just women's health and children's health, especially, and things like that. And it seemed like a natural progression to go into chiropractic because combined with nutrition, my master's in nutrition, I really was able to kind of understand what makes a kid healthy and what makes moms healthy. And it's just been a passion ever since then. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot through my own pregnancies and patients and stuff like that, and through my own children. And we don't always get it right, but we're learning every day, and it's just so much fun.
Yes, and Dr. Callahan actually taught them when I was a student. So I had Dr. B and Dr. Callahan at the I always forget the name. I have to look. Northeast College of Health Sciences, which was formerly known as NYCC. So I feel very lucky to have them as my teachers. And now we're back. Now that I'm in practice and learning so much, and now I want to start my own family. This is what kind of sparked my interest in this as well. So I'm very fortunate to have you, amazing, brilliant doctors in my field to, kind of figure out, because there's so much information out there, right? That we don't know what's actually helpful, and there's so much misconceptions about certain things. But I wanted to go back to what we talked about last time, Dr. B, about I actually had a few questions that people are like, I don't actually know what a macronutrient is or a
Mhm.
micronutrient. So can we go over that just really briefly? Like, what is a macronutrient exactly?
So there's only three macronutrients, and that is protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And so you want to think of protein, most people think of protein as eating meat or some kind of animal protein, dairy, meat. But again, you can have protein in fish when some people don't think of that as meat, or you can have it in plant-based protein like rice and beans together. And then carbohydrates is anything made from a plant. So if it's from a plant, it's a carbohydrate, and not just sugar is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are plants, so that means vegetables and fruits are carbohydrates.
Yes.
And then fats are really interesting because we think about fat like butter, but oils, but they are essential to your diet. You can eat them in smaller amounts than proteins or carbohydrates, but you still have to have them every single day at every single meal. So those are the three macronutrients. Now, your micronutrients are things that you need in milligram or microgram amounts, and those are your vitamins and your minerals. And you could also do herbs.
Perfect. That's a great summary of macro and micronutrients. And I know last time we talked about the importance of protein, and we need that structurally for a lot of things. So just to reiterate that point as well. And now going into pregnancy, So,
Mhm.
Dr. Callahan, what do pregnant women need, especially during this very big change in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. We need it all. We do. And I want to just kind of start the conversation by saying that now's not the time for what's known as kind of the mono diets, where you
Mm,
like totally restrict carbs or totally restrict fats. You
mm,
need all of those macronutrients. And you need it in good amounts because you're growing another little person inside
mhm.
of you. So, probably the biggest one I think that we tend to kind of shun, especially kind of naturally lately in trendy diets and stuff, is carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And in order for the mom to have a good developing baby and a good healthy body herself, and for the baby's brain to develop, she needs at least 175 grams a day, which is way beyond like a low carb diet
Yes.
recommendation. So several servings of just good grains, vegetables,
Hmm.
fruits are a great choice as well too. And it actually switches when she wants to eat it. So
Hmm.
the really cool thing about when, and I'm getting all nerdy on you, but
Yeah, I love it.
the really cool thing that happens is the first half of pregnancy, a mom's body is very building. So she's building
Okay.
things and storing things. So she's
Hmm.
storing fats, she's storing carbohydrates. And then the latter half of the pregnancy, when the baby really begins to grow in size, so it's not just growing little organs, now he or she is growing in size. Now mom starts to deliver all those nutrients. So now
Mm.
she stops storing it and she delivers. So because of that, she now kind of has a little bit of like hypoglycemia in between meals. So, how do
Hmm.
you normally feel when you're hypoglycemic? You're like hangry, right? You're
Hmm.
cranky,
So
you're
low
light,
blood sugar,
low
hypoglycemia.
blood
Yeah.
sugar. Yes,
Yes.
thank you, Kanita. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're just, you want to eat, right? And
Yeah.
that naturally happens in the latter half of pregnancy.
Mm.
So that means that those carbohydrates that break down slower. So
Okay.
not white sugar, not packaged carbohydrates, but like fruits and
Mm.
vegetables and high fiber cereal or protein bars with carbohydrates in it. Those are going to break down slower, so that's going to help her not feel so crummy in between the meals because of the natural changes in her body that's happening during the pregnancy.
Mm,
So,
perfect. And now in terms of, when I hear 175 grams
mhm.
of carbohydrates, what does that look like in a meal? And Dr. B can chime in, or Dr. Callahan, you can talk about this too. Because I feel like when they hear that, that's like, how much really is that in a meal?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. B, what do you think?
Well, I think when we're talking about carbohydrates, the most important thing is to think about how much fiber is in there. When I
Mm,
have fiber, then that's going to slow it down. So, as Dr. Callahan was saying, what we really want is something that's a whole grain or a fruit or a vegetable. So, what that turns out to be is 7 to 8 cups of those a day.
yes.
And then people are
Yeah.
like, oh, Lord, right? But one banana is a cup and one apple is a
Yeah.
cup.
I
And
get
if
so overwhelmed when I hear that. I'm like, 7 to 9. How much
yeah,
is
and so what I say to my patients is like, think about it in the morning. If you had a piece of toast and you had some whole grain cereal, you got two right there.
Mhm.
And if you had a banana or some berries with it,
Mhm.
you're already at three. You only got to get another five. And so just try to think about like three at every meal. If I can get three
Mhm.
good whole grain things. And we want to have plants that have been on the planet for 100 years. That's how we know it's going to be good. And 100 years ago, they didn't have a lot of white bread or
Yeah.
sugar
Mhm.
Mhm.
and cookies and stuff like that. They really had more whole food. So I think if you do that and you think, can I get three in per meal? That's probably going to get me where I want to go. How's that sound to you, Dr. Erica?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hardest part is the fiber. I think when we're not feeling great during pregnancy and or we're hungry or we're not hungry because we're nauseous, we tend to grab sleeves of Ritz crackers or like back
Mhm.
in the day that it was saltines, you know.
Yeah.
And that really is that breaks down so quickly in your body and creates such a sugar insulin response that your body is like, uses it quick and then it's gone. So those whole foods will break down a lot better, and that has the fiber in it. So even if you have to add fiber to things, Like you can add a little bit to shakes or to oatmeals or to cereals or things like that. Even as we're talking about potential power, I love that shake that I have in the morning, and that would be really good to ease everything down too. So,
Yes, especially for the first trimester, if you have morning sickness, right? I
yeah,
think the
yep,
um, potential power nutrition shake is great for that because it's easier to digest, or you can take it like little sips too to
yeah,
get some nutrition. So the summary is you definitely need carbohydrates.
yep,
Low carb diet is not the way if you're trying to create a little human in your
no,
body.
yes,
And preferably something that has also a higher fiber content so that carb to fiber ratio is
yep,
also less than 10. Is that correct, Dr. B?
That's it.
yeah.
Perfect. And so, talking about carbohydrates, the other thing is fats.
Mhm.
So, what do you have to say about that, Dr. Erica?
Yeah, yeah. I've done a lot of studying lately about fats, and they are so important to the way our cells, every cell in our body works. And our cells are made of a membrane, kind of like a balloon. And the
Hmm.
outside of the balloon of the membrane has to be squishy and has to be fluid. Otherwise, it doesn't signal and work and is not shaped as well as it should. And what makes up that membrane is fats. So we are what we eat, but we also learn to, which is even further, we are what we eat, digest, utilize, and absorb, right, Dr. Balliett?
Yeah.
So,
Right?
but good fats in means that we have the building blocks to make those good fats and those good cell membranes. So, this is especially important in cells that are long and thin, like the nerve cells in a
Hmm.
baby, and their brain cells, and every cell, but especially the nervous system. So there's a couple of fats that you've probably heard of. DHA is one of
Hmm.
them,
Hmm.
and then choline is another
Yes.
type of fat component. Super important for the cell membrane, and both of those are important for mom to be able to eat every day because sometimes it's hard for her to be able to make it in her body. So she should
Mm.
eat them every day.
Hmm. Now, what kinds of foods has the DHA and choline?
Yeah, so for the most part, you do have some DHA in some of your plants, but you're going to find them mostly in fish. So a
Yeah.
lot of your like tuna oils and things like that will have it in it. And choline can be found in some nuts and seeds and eggs and things like that. So am I missing anything,
Perfect.
Dr. Mary?
No, I would say you're right. When we talk about DHA, really, you need fish oils in general, or you need to eat
Hmm.
fish. You can make it from
Mm-hmm.
flax seeds if you're a vegetarian, but it's a really expensive pathway. And so not everybody does it well. And
Yeah.
'cause it costs a lot. It costs a lot to do that. And so sometimes marine lipids they can have that's more vegetarian kind of source
Hmm.
that you can get. It has to say that it has DHA in it. And then we were talking ahead of time about fish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to throw that back over to Erica. How much fish today? Because they keep
Hmm.
changing it. How
Yeah.
much fish is safe, would you say, for pregnant mothers?
Yeah, I think the current recommendation is only 1 or 2 servings a week, but they're special kinds. So
Right.
it's
Yes.
like tuna and like shrimp and scallops are the most common. There's a couple other ones that aren't very common to eat, but things that are deep water, cold water fish and larger fish like mackerel and things like that are too high in mercury levels. So you have to be
Hmm.
really cautious. So really, you can only eat a couple servings recommended as a pregnant woman.
You said
Yeah.
once a week, Dr. Erica?
1 to 2 servings a week.
1 to 2
Yeah.
servings a week. Yeah, this is I think I talked to you guys about this book. It was called
Mm,
Expecting Better.
yeah.
So
Yes.
this by Emily Oster. She I believe is like a health economics
Mhm.
professor. So and it was similar journey with you both as well, where she just didn't like the information that was out there or the recommendations, and she's like, I'm gonna do my own research.
Yeah.
So she went through the research with I was just pulling up about fish and fish oils, and it's similar to what you guys said, and the when they tell you you can't eat sushi,
Right.
when you're pregnant. And that's not necessarily true from what she's saying, but like you said, making sure you're not having the high mercury fish like the swordfish.
Fish.
I think even canned tuna, there's still a little,
Sometimes.
yeah. So maybe like fresh tuna is a little bit better, but more of the small fishes like the sardines. Yes.
Sardines, yeah.
Yeah, really good. So those are like the safer ways to get your omega-3s as well. And I love sushi, so if I get pregnant, that's going to be really hard for me too. But maybe like once in a while. But it's not, it's not bad because you do need the omega-3s and the DHA and choline from that. So that was really interesting to read about that as well. She talks a little bit about deli meats to avoid that because of the I forget what.
The nitrates,
Yeah.
the nitrates and the nitrates in there. It you know what it is that what you want to think about for pregnant women and everyone actually is you want to think of your cell. Do you want it to be a grape or do you want it to be a raisin? And you really want a grape. And the problem with deli meats, which are delicious because of their high salt content, that salt is outside the cell, so it pulls water out, so you kind of shrivel up a little bit there, and so you don't want to do that. You want to have more fruits and vegetables, which is going to make you more of a grape, and when you eat a lot of very salty things, that makes you more of a raisin. So you just always want to think about that. It's not no sodium, but you want to have the right sodium potassium ratio. And the other reason is pregnant women, they do this thing where they get a lot of what's called blood volume. They're really holding on to things. That's what they do. And we don't want to get hypertensive as a pregnant woman because that can lead to this horrible thing called preeclampsia. So the key thing is the last year they got a great study and they're just saying it's really the sodium to potassium ratio that's important. And that makes it so much easier. So you can just look at the label. If you look at it, it has a lot of sodium and no potassium, and be like, But if it has a more even balance where you have equal potassium to sodium or more potassium, that's good for you. And that's just going to keep the volume of the water better for both the baby and the mommy, and actually for all of us, so that we don't wrinkle up.
So 1-to-1 ratio essentially, but a little bit more potassium.
A little more potassium.
Got it.
A little more potassium, but at least 1-to-1. But potassium a little higher is good.
Amazing. No, great point. Love that.
And just for a visual of how much water we gain when we're pregnant, 7 to 10 liters. So like if you think of a 2 liter of soda, 5 of those is what you gain in water weight. That is a lot of water.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah. The electrolytes are key. Yes.
It is a lot of water because when you have that baby, the reason you lose so much weight out of the gate, so to speak, is not that little 5 to 8 pound. It is that water that you do lose right away because you're kind of, you got to be like the water bed for that baby. You got to cushion that thing up.
Just like
so you want to have that right ratio. You don't want to have your legs all swelled up and then you're like, oh, it's hard.
Oh God.
I mean, I was pregnant a long, long time ago, but yeah.
You remember.
I do. I do remember. And I did not know as much as this.
All right. So I love it. Talking about DHA, choline, talked about sodium potassium ratio, making sure you get a little bit more potassium and not too much of the sodium because that can pull the water out and make you become a raisin, which you don't want. So the next macronutrient is protein. So, Docs, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, protein is our building blocks. So everything from little muscles to little hearts to organ systems to even the neurotransmitters are going to be made through those protein building blocks. So we typically want to recommend at least a gram for every kilogram of body weight. So if you are unsure how to calculate that, it's okay. Don't let me say it wrong. You take your body weight in pounds and you divide it by 2.2 to get kilograms. Yes. So it's an easy conversion. So say that number for you is 75, then you would aim for 75 grams a day, which doesn't sound like a lot, but from doing years of nutritional practice, and Dr. Mary could probably comment as well too, I would say most women are maybe getting 45 to 50. We tend to kind of forget our protein intake. So we probably want to double that when we're in pregnancy up to what we're usually eating. And what I learned from Dr. Mary in school, and I still use with my patients and my students, is it's a serving size is about the size and shape of the palm of your hand. So about 3 to 4 times a day. And that'll give you close to what you should get during pregnancy. So that's a general overall recommendation.
And just to say, the Potential Power Nutrition has 24 grams.
It does, yes. It's a tremendous support. Yeah, it's easy. And I like the fact, I like easy. And I think pregnant women and nursing moms would like easy as well, too. If it's something that you can put in a shake and take with you and sip throughout the day or in the car ride, I mean, that is a powerful punch at 20 to 25 grams. You know, plus whatever you add to it could be over potentially half of what you need for the day, just in that breakfast or lunch or whenever you drink it throughout the day. And it's easy to digest. And sometimes when we were talking, we're feeling kind of sick and we're like, I can't eat a piece of chicken right now, but we could have a chocolate shake. That sounds delicious.
Yes.
You know? Like, yeah, let's throw some berries in it. I'll feel good about it.
Yes, that's what I do all the time. The berries, some nut butter with that.
Yep.
So I always add like calories, because now I'm adding more protein to it. And then you get your, 2 cups of fruit and veggies. It's like,
correct. Exactly right. Like this morning I had it with frozen banana. So then with the fiber plus the banana, that was 2. I got 2 right with the shake and my 24 grams. Yeah. Had pizza, had some high fiber, high protein cereal with it. So I was at 30. So it worked out great.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. We always like nice and easy.
Yeah.
So, I know we're all women of on the go. So all of us. We have to have something easy. And
it's easier than you think to get protein in. I mean, again, we kind of think of like, oh, I need to eat a piece of chicken or steak. But I mean, you can take a handful of nuts or seeds. These are really high in protein and good fats. You can do hummus. You can do beans. You can do, good protein bars or protein shakes. And, there's some ways to get it in as you kind of snack throughout the day that would be kind of conducive to when you don't feel well or you're busy as well. So there's different ways for sure. Hard-boiled egg, cheeses. Oh, there's so many when you start thinking about it.
I think the issue is, I think for some women, they don't realize an egg is only 6. So when you got to get to 75 or 80 and you're like, oh, I had an egg for breakfast. And you're like, that's 6. That's the issue, is that, all of a sudden you get really good at counting.
Palm, got to do the serving sizes.
So you said for especially pregnant women, they need about 3 to 4 times of the palm of your hand, essentially.
At least.
Yeah. So more like 70 to 80, you would say, Dr. B? Of
absolutely. I would say that for sure. Sure. Because that's like the minimum. So, then there's a lot of new literature about protein. And what happens is, like, this is what we've been saying for a while. And this is like the minimum. You want to do okay, you're going to do this. So you're going to pass with this, but you could do a little bit more. So it's not going to hurt you go a little over. What you don't want to do is go under, because this is like the line in the sand. So you want to meet this.
Yes, and that can lead to, well, I'm not sure about this, so you can definitely correct me, is leading to underweight babies.
Yes.
Perhaps too. Yeah.
That's the problem, right? Or the mother, more likely, as most women know, the mother will lose her muscle mass to give it to the baby. So it's interesting when we talk about why, when Erica's like, in the beginning, the mom is storing it and then the mom is giving it. And so it's really in that giving stage that the baby literally makes a hormone that blocks the mother from getting some nutrition, particularly the baby's like, it's mine. Right? Get used to that before they're even 2. They're doing it to you the whole time. They're like, it's mine. And the mother will sacrifice that for her child. And so she is going to have issues with her muscle mass, which is her metabolic health, with her bones, now, and a lot of pregnant women, because they're not having, we didn't talk about calcium yet, like then they'll be like, why did my tooth crack? Well, the baby took that. And
why is my hair falling out?
Yes,
exactly. My hair is falling out. Why is that? my skin's naked. So I think, we have to really get the baby's the baby, and it's going to take a lot. And so the mother has to do, as they say, put the oxygen mask on yourself.
Yeah. I did want to, before we go on to micronutrients, because we spoke a few days ago about this, it'd be fun to address, is the microbiome and healthy bacteria for the mama and baby. We did speak a little bit about, so we could talk about the microbiome first and then about peanut and nut allergies, because I thought that might be relevant now with how many kids are getting like peanut and so many allergies that are coming about nowadays.
Yeah, so the microbiome is just your good bacteria. So they have to be fed, which they're going to be fed by what you eat. And that's going to be the stuff that you can't eat, which is the fiber. So that's why we keep saying eat these whole foods that were grown 100 years ago and not packaged, because the outside of apples and outside of berries and the outside of wheat germ is what your bacteria eat. And when they eat, they're happy, they reproduce, they protect your gut, and then they also produce things known as postbiotics. And those postbiotics are vitamins like biotin and gases that help just to heal, protect, and to strengthen our gut. So not only is it really important for mom, because lots of things happen hormonally in pregnancy, and we might get constipated or nauseous or gassy. So it can help kind of change some of those symptoms. But there's some evidence to suggest that mom's good bacteria is passed on to baby when he or she is born, especially if that is it's a vaginal delivery. So you want to set yourself up for a good bacteria population so that you can give that to your baby first off, because they come from a sterile environment inside of you. The first thing they touch is you when they come out. So you want to have good things to give to them.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool. It's super cool.
It is super cool. And that's why the thing is, we want to feed them things that they like. And so when I eat fruits and vegetables, that maybe you've heard, there's things that are called FOS, for fructooligosaccharides. And they are what is only healthy bacteria can eat those. And the problematic bacteria, it won't feed them. So you literally are starving out the bad guys and only feed in the good guys. And things like spring mix and onions and bananas, artichokes, those are all really high in fructose, as is fruits. That means anything that has a seed. So peppers and pumpkin and anything with a seed is a fruit. And they all have FOS. And the bad bacteria, like you've heard, like be careful, E. coli 0157, well, that won't feed them. And so you're going to feed the really good guys. Now, when I eat sugar, the bad guys like a lot of sugar.
Yes.
And so that's why you're like, well, I can eat more calories pregnant. Absolutely. But again, we want to say to ourselves, and this is what I say to my patients, I want you to think of your body like it's a dog. I know that sounds crazy, but no one would treat a dog the way they treat themselves. And when people are having issues with their diet, a lot of times they'll feed themselves junk. They would never feed their beloved pet. And so I'm like, just treat yourself like you are your puppy that you love. You're buying top end dog food for them. And then you're putting junk in and that's really the reason. The junk food is going to feed those negative bacteria, especially the yeast and these guys that don't, that make a lot of gas for you. And so we don't really want to do that, because it's not going to be good for you, but because now your intestines are really in a hostile environment. And then they're going to be like, I don't want to do my job. I'm in a hostile work environment. And
it's toxic.
I don't want that. So
we're going to have a strike.
Exactly. And we know what that looks like, right?
Yes.
So anyway, we want to have something like Dr. Callahan was saying, like, we want the good bacteria. They'll make things for us. They'll make biotin for you, which is going to help your hair and skin and your nails. They're going to make short chain fatty acids, which is going to keep your bad cholesterol down and not let you have cardiovascular disease. They're gonna also short chain fatty acids are these things that your cells love to eat. And they're like, oh, you fed me, so I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna digest and absorb your food for you. I'm gonna give that to you and your baby. And so don't we want that?
Yes.
Sure do.
We want all of those things.
We do.
No, I love it. It's just, yeah, there's so many things to read about. It's hard to know, what they tell all these pregnant ladies, you should eat this or, limit carbs, which is now we know is incorrect. But getting the right carbs, not the things that have been growing on the planet, really plant-based kind of things. What about the peanut and nut allergy issue? Is that if your child may be allergic to, or even dairy? I think I've heard of that too, dairy or nut. Would you expose them for a little bit to make them become less allergic to that? Or do you know how that works, or what's the research on that?
Um, Personally, who has a lot of food allergies, what happens is that unfortunately it is genetic, some food allergies. So the key thing is if the mom is allergic and she's having a big allergic reaction, you know how like if you're allergic, you get all that water in your, right?
Yeah.
Well, that water's also going in your colon. So it's water's going where it shouldn't go. And so then you're going to not digest your food as well. So if the mom has food allergies, it'd be better for her at this point, I would say, to avoid those food allergies. If the mom's not allergic, then that would be good. And one thing that they say is that a mom who eats a more wide variety of food, that baby will have a much better palate and
Yes,
will like
that makes
more
sense.
things. And if the mother eats more things when she's nursing, the baby will also have a better palate and will eat more things later. So if you don't want to have a picky eater, it's good to be a good eater yourself. Picky eaters are really a parent problem.
Like most things are. Yeah. My mom used to tell me that she just ate pizza all the time. And that's why I love pizza, man.
Do you? Yeah.
I loved pizza pregnant, as a matter of fact. I actually know the literature on why that is because I did love pizza. I was allergic to dairy before I was pregnant, but I could eat dairy when I was pregnant.
Oh, what?
And I
Okay.
had no issue. And so I think that's why that was so great. And then pizza happens to be a bread that has yeast in it. And that yeast has a lot of B vitamins in it. So I think it's because you have this increased need for good carbs and you have this increased need for B vitamins. And a lot of women who are lactose intolerant, that's really what I am. For whatever reason, that totally went away for me pregnant. And I did love pizza. And my child, who's an adult, he loves pizza still. So
I'm actually lactose intolerant too, so I'm going to be interested to see what happens when I get pregnant.
Yeah, I would be
yes,
interested.
I can eat pizza.
Yeah, Dr. Callahan, you did no dairy pregnant, right?
Not a lot because I just couldn't really digest it. So, but what I did notice, and this is just kind of a side of, I do know that autoimmune conditions tend to get a little better during pregnancy because your body has to drop that immune system response so it doesn't attack the baby.
I had a few of my patients there. She had like psoriatic like the psoriasis, all went away, like the skin. Every time she got pregnant. She got pregnant twice. It happened 2 times. So interesting.
And sometimes if you have an autoimmune condition, you feel great. You're like, well, this is great. And the high levels of progesterone is very protective and helps your nerves and you feel great. But lactose intolerance isn't typically autoimmune. So it's interesting. Maybe your digestion is just better, so.
For whatever reason, it was a little better. Yeah. Although I have to say pizza has mozzarella cheese, which doesn't have lactose in it. So maybe it was that.
That could be that.
Maybe.
Yes. It was just an opioid cheese.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, totally. I think it was just
I love it. Okay, that gives me hope when I'm pregnant. Then I can eat pizza.
Well, mozzarella, no lactose.
Mozzarella. Okay, got it. All right, so we talked about the macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and protein, and that's all amazing information for everyone, pregnant women especially, obviously. So now going on to the micronutrients that we need during while pregnant. What do you guys have to say about that?
Ooh, where do we want to start?
We can start with
Hmm.
the B9 and B12. We can start
All
there.
right. Well, that'll be me.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
that'll be me. I know whose job certain things are. Uh, so a lot of you have heard of MTHFR. 40% of people have an MTHFR gene defect, so it's super popular. And what happens is that means that B9, which is folic acid, doesn't get methylated by a certain enzyme that for the other 60% do use it.
Hmm.
But fear not, because that group methylates using choline, which Dr. Erica Callahan talked about, and the importance of choline, which is in nuts and
Hmm.
egg yolks and chocolate, and
Mm.
also in anything that says lecithin in it. So a lot of salad dressings have lecithin, and that's what's in the
Hmm.
chocolate. And so you just want to have choline in your diet, and it comes a lot of times as phosphatidylcholine, but as long as it has that word choline, it's in
Choline.
there.
Okay.
And then that's
Perfect.
going to methylate folic acid. And most of us have heard that pregnant women have to have 400 international units at least
Hmm.
of folic acid, because that is what you need. Because folic acid lets you do a thing called cell division. You have to be able to divide your cells, so you have to make more. So if you want to
Hmm.
heal a cut, you need folic acid, but you always
Hmm.
have to have it with B12. And so B12, naturally, if you ate it, B12 would come from bacteria acting on only animal protein, and they make a thing called methylcobalamin. And
Hmm.
so that's very important to have, is methylcobalamin. And sadly, a lot of vitamins out there have cyanocobalamin, but that can have side effects like
Mm.
joint pain and nerve pain. And so we don't really want cyanocobalamin. Your body has to take the cyano group off, which is the cyanide group, and put a methyl
Hmm.
group on it. So we really want to have methylcobalamin or have a
Yes.
natural source by eating meat that has been
Yeah.
aged a little bit. And then they work together. You want to think of, let's say, baseball. You want to pass these things called methyl groups so that you can do
Hmm.
cell division. You're going to like throw the methyl ball from first base to second base to
Hmm.
third base to home. So you get a home run. And so you need vitamin B6, which is pyridoxine. You need
Hmm.
folic acid, which is B9, and you
Hmm.
need B12, which is the active form is methylcobalamin. So 6, 9, 12,
Mm-hmm.
they're the
6, 9,
players.
12.
6,
Six,
9,
nine, 12.
12. They're the
Yes.
players, passing that group around. And then you do this really nice thing. You grow. You grow hair,
Hmm.
you grow skin, you grow nails, you grow babies. That's what
Yes.
you need to do it all.
Now, just to reiterate for the audience too, so Miss Dr. B is talking about the methylation cycle when she speaks about passing the methyl groups or passing the ball around, because I think you said that not everyone can have a ball, right? Or else it's not, you can't really score a home run. You have to pass what's called a methyl group to the different bases so you can score a home run. So the more home runs you have, the better. So you need the B6, B9, B12 to do all that. So I love you
Yeah,
need
but
folic acid.
yes, I can.
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to interrupt. You're right. We
Hmm.
don't want them all to be methylated. So
Yeah.
Right.
that's what you're saying. We want one ball that we're going to pass
Yeah.
around.
Yes.
Very
Yep.
good. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And um, in terms of B12, we want the methylcobalamin and not the cyanocobalamin because, yeah, cyanide doesn't sound great when you say it like that. You don't want cyanide in your
It sure
body.
doesn't.
So
Nope.
you want to definitely check those labels in terms of what kind of B12 you're getting in that case for sure. Um, so we need all those to help with cell division so that the baby can grow and you can have amazing hair and nails and skin as well because those are cells that divide a lot.
For sure.
Yes. So what other micronutrients do we need now for the baby? There's vitamin D is on here on this list.
Yeah, yeah, lots of good research on vitamin D. So we kind of think of it as a vitamin and we name it as
Hmm.
such, but it's really a prohormone. It is a precursor to a lot of our different neurotransmitters and immune system regulation. So it helps us to fight infections and to stay healthy and to make good hormones and brain chemicals and all those kinds of things. So if you have there's some really cool studies, and these studies are years old, so I'm sure there's even cooler studies now that shows that there's a direct correlation to the vitamin D consumption or exposure to sunlight that a mom has,
Oh,
and then
interesting.
how the child develops. So some of the studies actually look at whether or not the child is going to have an autoimmune condition, such as like
Mm.
multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune condition of the central nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And for moms, which is super interesting to me because the moms that had babies in April had a
Oh,
higher risk of MS children. And it's because if you had babies in April, when were you
yeah,
pregnant? You were pregnant
yeah.
in February,
Winter.
January,
Yeah,
December,
the
in the
winter
winter.
months.
So you
That's
weren't
so
outside
interesting.
and you weren't getting sunlight. And they correlated it to the direct sunlight. Whereas if you had a baby in November, you were pregnant in September, August, July,
Yeah.
June. And I have a baby in April and I had a baby in December. So if I had not taken any vitamin D supplementation,
Mm.
it was just on my sun exposure risk, since I have an autoimmune disease, would
Mm-hmm.
my children had a different risk? The literature says they would have. So to
Wow.
mitigate if moms can be outside or not outside, if you're in upstate New York and it's super
Yeah.
cold and you can't
Oh
be outside
God.
in January,
Or in
then
April sometimes.
or in April or May,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
you might want to have your pregnant mom on a vitamin D supplement.
I love
So
it. How
yeah,
much would you have them take in this case?
yeah, so you don't want to overdose any of your fat soluble vitamins, which vitamin
Yeah.
D is. So anywhere between 2 to 4,000 international units, maybe 4,000
Mm.
during those winter months and
Mm.
2,000 for the other months. And just, to her tolerance and once a day. There's also some cool correlations to IQ in the children later if mom was taking vitamin D. There's just
Mm.
really cool things that I don't even think we've uncovered yet as to what vitamin D does to set us up for, kind of good success later on in life.
Mm.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the leading researcher in vitamin D is Dr. Hollick. He wrote a book called Vitamin D, and I saw him at the Vitamin D Symposium way back in 2010.
There's a
And
vitamin D symposium. That's
Yes, there is.
hilarious.
he actually had Luke Skywalker as his introduction. Go to the
Oh,
light, Luke. Go to the light.
Yep.
And so it's really important. He showed in a landmark study that he had a lot of trouble getting funded by NIH, that pregnant women may need as many as 4,000
oh.
international units, and the
Mm-hmm.
RDA is only 400. So
Yeah.
you might really need 4,000. But you can get it tested at your doctor's, and the normal
Yes.
level 30 to 80. He's like, try to be around that 50 mark.
Yeah.
And so it's great to get tested. I have my patients tested in October. That's the best it's ever going to be, because that's when they'll have been outside,
Yeah,
and it gets
that's
worse.
true.
I live in New York, so it's always worse as the day goes, the weeks
Yeah.
go on, and your mood will improve. Seasonal affective
Absolutely.
disorder is really
For
a
sure.
vitamin D deficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I felt that in upstate New York while studying.
Yeah, that resonates, doesn't it?
It does.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super. Just in my personal case too, I just play a lot of tennis outside, so that helps. But sometimes my vitamin D level is still kind of low. I'm not sure why. Like last time I checked, even in the summer, was around. And I stopped taking the vitamin D supplement because I got kind of too high. So I was like, whoa. My doctor's like, yeah, let's bring that back down, because I think it was getting to like 70. But it was like pretty low. The lowest I've been was around like I think 25 or 30. So I don't know. It's really interesting. I have to kind of take it. Like I take about around what you said, 4,000 until I can get it to 50 again. But I'm not sure why with my sun exposure it's not. It's not absorbing
Yeah,
as
no,
much.
it's interesting. There is a genetic impact of
Mm,
that. And
I
so if
suspected.
you run people's nutrigenomics and you run their profile and you look at 23andMe and you run it through something like methyl genetics, some people, because their heritage was where there was quite a bit of sun, they
Mm,
bizarrely need a little bit more.
Yeah.
So if you are from a culture that lived near the coast and you got a little bit more naturally, you you don't want to get overdone, like Dr. Callahan said, like, right, it can be toxic at high doses. So your body
Yes.
kind of is playing that game. So that is why I think you
Ah,
should actually get checked, and then you can figure it out. And you don't want to
that
be
might
at
be why.
80, but you don't want to be at
Yeah.
25. That is definitely not enough.
No, yeah, that makes sense too, because my at least my background is from like the in Thailand and those China the areas where you're closer to the equator.
Mhm.
So yeah, they had to. It's a protective. I can see that as being a protective mechanism. You don't want too much vitamin D absorption if you're in the sun all the time. So very interesting. Love that.
Mhm.
So we talked about the B9 or B6, folic acid, B12, vitamin D. There's also iodine and selenium. If
Mhm.
you want to comment on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
gonna let Dr. Callahan take this because she knows everything about
Yes,
thyroid.
love it.
Oh, you. No, it's, I mean, in a nutshell, both those are super important for your
Hmm.
thyroid. And you need your thyroid, which is the little gland in here. It's kind of butterfly
Yep.
shaped, but it
Yep.
fuels your metabolism and it fuels how you feel. It really does. If you had to kind of put a sentence on it, your thyroid health is how you feel.
Mm,
So not only support during pregnancy is that important to make sure you have iodine and selenium, but also for the developing baby. And you don't want too much. So just even, I mean, it's kind of hard to get it in a natural form unless you want to eat like oysters and seaweed and stuff like that. So iodine, just iodized salt, just using it to taste is plenty for most people.
perfect.
Very few
Iodine
women
salt.
are at an iodine deficiency risk, but
Yeah.
many of us are at a selenium
Selenium.
deficiency risk.
Yes.
It's just not in the soil anymore. So,
Mm.
I mean, actually, we just did it in our class a couple days ago, and they looked up on NIH Office of Dietary Supplements sources of selenium, and the top things were like meat products, which never
Mm.
used to be. It used to be plants because the
Right.
plants would absorb it from the soil, but because it's not in the soil anymore, our plants just don't have it. So our
Yeah.
highest sources are actually really low sources in dairy products and meats and stuff like that. So
I think
Brazil
Brazil
nuts,
nuts have. Yes, I was about to
yes.
say. But only like I think, like you say, you don't want too much, so you can have like one or two. Because those actually Brazil nuts are quite large. They're not
Yeah,
like
they are. Yep. A
yeah.
typical like serving size of like nuts or seeds or something is like a quarter cup, which ends up being like a
Yes.
little handful, which if you
Hmm.
throw like two, three Brazil nuts on there, that's all you need. So
Yeah.
and that
So
could give
get
you a
some
good
Brazil
amount.
nuts.
Yeah. If you don't mind the taste. Sometimes it's a little bit bittery or metallic-y, at least to me, but I don't know. You guys mind Brazil nuts at all?
Well,
So
I take one or two a day, like my husband does as well, because he wanted to up his selenium
yep.
intake. Um, and this is kind of funny, but back in school, I also ate or cooked chicken hearts too. No
Yeah.
one's gonna cook that, but that also has high
Right.
selenium. That makes sense because of how much selenium you need
Yeah.
in your heart to
Yes, you
pump
do. It's a
stuff.
powerful antioxidant. You're right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
So,
good.
so if you want to eat chicken hearts, you can do that
Or
too.
liver.
You
Or
can.
liver,
Yeah,
yes.
you can.
So awesome. Iodine, selenium, great for thyroid support, metabolism. And how about calcium? Because I know there's a lot of stuff with calcium as well, how much to have and what's safe.
Yeah, what do you think, Dr. Mary?
The thing about calcium is that you do need all that calcium, like they say, where they're saying 1,000, 1,200 milligrams. But the problem is you don't want to do it all as a supplement or all at once.
Hmm.
When I start to do something that doesn't come that way in nature, our body deals with that by trying not to let you overload that. So you do need calcium also for your colon health, which is kind of great.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want to do is we want to have calcium. I try to say to everybody, try not to do more than about 350 at any one meal. That's probably the most you're going to be able to genuinely absorb at any one time. And unfortunately, if it's like calcium carbonate, it's not going to get in at all. So that's not such a good form. So now we have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about the form as well. We don't want the oxide form of minerals. They're not absorbable.
Okay.
And we don't want the carbonate form. And so there was a big thing, back in the 80s and early 90s about oyster shell calcium. Like,
Yep.
oh, but that's pretty much not absorbable. Now,
Oh
what's
gosh.
interesting is that if you put calcium carbonate in orange juice, it becomes calcium citrate, which is totally absorbable. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
and actually Cornell woman nutritionist. She is the one who discovered that. And I knew her personally. And so intriguingly for some, like 4 ounces of orange juice that has, I wouldn't do more than 4 ounces because orange juice is way too high glycemic index,
Sugar,
but it has some calcium that could be a way. And then greens, intriguingly, have a lot of calcium.
Yes, they do.
And the problem when you do calcium without magnesium is they really kind of share a transporter. So they naturally come together. So when I eat greens, calcium comes with magnesium. It's just a better way to have it. So here's the weird thing. Dairy products, which a lot of people were doing a lot of dairy, it has a lot of calcium in it. But intriguingly, sometimes it wasn't getting absorbed as well. And so that was a big issue for women. So, and they put vitamin A palmitate in fluid milk. So I'm more of a fan of yogurt. We have a more acidic pH. We can do 1 serving of yogurt, and that's going to have a better amount of calcium in it. So for me, Dr. Callahan can weigh in on this. I just feel like a fermented form is going to be a little better, and we don't want to be doing too much fluid milk because of the vitamin A, although they've cut back the vitamin A palmitate in fluid milk. I looked it up the other day to make sure, because I knew we were going to talk about this. And so make sure that that's safe for pregnant women.
Yeah, and the fermented source is a great recommendation because that would help the microbiome that we were speaking about earlier. And that's a nice, safe way to get in is yogurt, because some fermented foods you don't want to do during pregnancy, but yogurt you definitely can.
Yeah, and then we go back to our mozzarella. We're going to tie all this together. Mozzarella is cheese that is actually soaked in brine, so it actually has a little microbiome on it also.
Oh, yes.
So some cheeses have that, so it's kind of interesting.
That's cool.
I like how we're just tying it back to pizza, so it's great.
We're gonna, that's our thing. This is like, it's really okay. Probably a better choice because it has protein and stuff.
Yes, the protein, simple.
Maybe eating a bag of candy. We're gonna kind of lean away from the candy, and we're gonna have something maybe a little calcium and
Awesome. No, that's really good to know. Like the fermented form, the yogurt is better to have, and again, helping the microbiome, which is super important for mom and baby. The last 2 things I have on here are potassium and iron before we close out. So what do you guys have to say about the potassium and iron in terms of how much that pregnant women should get?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to iron. We actually need quite a bit when we're pregnant. I think it's about 18 milligrams when we're not pregnant as a female, and then it goes up to 30 after the 12th week. And that's just to prevent an iron deficiency anemia, which is super common in pregnancy because of the increased blood volume and the need to transport oxygen and just growth. Lots of stuff going on. So what you want to do is help support that you don't have to do an iron deficiency anemia treatment, because that dosage can go up to 60 or even sometimes 180 milligrams. And iron as a metal is pretty hard to take as a supplement, especially in high doses. It can, create a lot of GI upset, but then constipate you quite a bit. So even if you have to take an iron supplement, if you're not getting it through meats or beans or things like that, then a good 8 form, that same type of 8 that we've talked about, not the carbonate, but an iron in a nice chelated form, which Potential Power does have. And the Potential Power is really nice because it only has, I think, like 7.6 milligrams.
Yeah.
So it's safe for anybody, and it gives a nice step in the right direction for the pregnant people that need up to those 30 milligrams. So.
Right. And then I've just been working with a lot of women who are heavy menstruators, or working with doctors that have a peds practice. So they're seeing a lot of pregnant women, and they're having really good things with the chelated iron or iron bisglycinate, because glycine is an amino acid that helps make the ring that holds the iron and the hemoglobin. So that's a really nice form. I've been kind of leaning towards that, the iron bisglycinate. Don't have it with other things in there because you don't know what the other things are. Try to get it by itself. And that usually comes 18 to 25 milligrams. And so then with the Potential Power Nutrition 7, now we're right at that range that you need. So that makes it really like perfect. Yeah. And it's hard to get enough iron if you don't eat red meat, It's hard to get enough iron in the day in a normal calorie diet.
It is. Yeah.
And like you said, the supplement, if the pregnant woman's already having nausea and constipation and they have to try, it's going to be not
Right.
great.
She don't want to take that.
She don't
No.
want to
want
take that.
Yeah, a more Western clinical approach is they'll give you iron sulfate, which sounds like it should work, but it doesn't.
No.
It sounds like it should, but
it does.
It's very constipating and that's not so great.
Got it. And I believe we did talk about potassium before already to help with dehydration and the extremity swelling as well.
Yes.
If you just want to reiterate that, Dr.
Absolutely.
B.
And potassium comes naturally in fruits and vegetables. You don't want to take a potassium supplement. That's not good for you because potassium is very important for your heart. But when you eat it as food and when, in Potential Power, that potassium in there is actually from the food that's in there, from the pea protein and from the chocolate, the cocoa. It's not actually added. So as long as it's in the food, your body knows what to do with it. And so if you're having a serving of fruit or vegetables in general, that's how you're going to get your potassium needs met. So we said you're going to have to do 7 or 8 or 9 of those in a day. So you're just going to need that. That's going to help both you and the baby hold the water in and be a grape.
Be a grape.
Be a grape.
Be a grape. I love it. No, this is amazing, docs. Actually, I'm surprised that we almost at the time that we said we would do.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about macro and micronutrients that I think is very pertinent in at least today's culture of like, what do we really need to eat to get enough nutrients in our bodies, especially when we're growing another human. So just to summarize, carbohydrates for the macro side, 175 grams that are needed to help develop the baby's nervous system. We need fats. We need the DHA choline to help, again, develop the nervous system, hormone for the mom and baby, the cell membrane health, which is super important, and protein, doing 1 gram per kilogram body weight. So you divide your body weight in pounds divided by 2.2 to get how much. And usually at the minimum for pregnant was like 70 to 80 grams of protein, probably more than that. And then in terms of micronutrients, need the B6, B9, B12, vitamin D, iodine, selenium, calcium, potassium, and iron. And a lot of this is actually in the Potential Power Nutrition. And I know I'm kind of doing a self-experiment because I'm not pregnant yet, but I know, the docs know that we are going to try. So I'm kind of wondering, because I've been taking this for a year, how I'm going to do with the nausea and all that. So I'm very interested to see that aspect. And it also has a lot of and I know a lot of, because of me doing Chinese herbal medicine, a lot of pregnant women ask me if herbs are safe. So as long as, if you're doing Chinese herbal medicine with a proper practitioner who had the training, because I have a master's in the Chinese herbology training. I had great teachers, as Dr. B knows, and Dr. Erica, you know the ergos and all that, so they taught me really well. And so you definitely want to go to someone that has credentials enough to give you herbal supplements, and you're not buying them yourself. So please don't do that. Go to someone that's well versed in it, so you know what you're getting. It's completely safe during pregnancy. And the Potential Power Nutrition has like turmeric and cinnamon and ginger. And ginger is really helpful for nausea and vomiting as well. So with this, I know we talked about all the macro and micronutrients, but I'm a big proponent of the breakfast blend because it has all the nutrients you need. And again, being in a society that kind of is on the go and you need to go do stuff, this is super helpful to be able to get all the vitamins and nutritions I need on the go while also keeping myself healthy and keeping everything as well as I can be as if I'm going to be pregnant too. So just my little tidbit on that. And again, Dr. Erica, Dr. Mary, thank you so much for coming on this with me. We actually didn't get to talk about the other things, but maybe you can.
We'll come
I'll have to
back.
have you. Yeah,
We'll
you have
come
to come
back.
back.
Yeah. This
And
is super fun.
we can talk about other things during. We didn't even talk about breastfeeding and
Yeah.
after the baby comes out. What do you do after that? That's a lot of people's questions.
That is a
You
million
know.
dollar question, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
No,
this is,
it takes a long time to grow a baby. It takes a long time to talk about it.
Yep.
and then
That's
it's a
right.
lifetime after that. That
Yes.
after the baby comes out, it's a lifetime job.
Yep.
So I thank you so much for talking about the importance of nutrition during pregnancy. And there's just so much information out there. So I really appreciate you both kind of making this very digestible for the audience to know what they can eat and what's important in their nutrition for themselves and the baby. So thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, yes.